really hard to break out of what you'd known pretty much for your entire life. Did you ever feel like when you started breaking away that the fear, were you doing the right thing? Were you overreacting? And I'm just trying to think of all the emotions that would come at that point in somebody's life, when they're trying to break away from something that they're used to all the time. What was the main emotion? Because I know with something like that there's a million and one. What was the main emotion that you came across when you first started on your journey to where you are today?
Well, I would say from the time, really, for me in a lot of ways, it goes back to being a little child and never accepting that fate. And I always knew I was going to get out of there, and I was going to find a way into another world where that was not acceptable to do to a child. And so for me, I had a sort of that going for me. I think just as a soul, I came into this life very powerfully integrated on that kind of a level. Like I never went into that. I never experienced that kind of abuse and thought this is okay. I always thought I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to find a way out of this. But at the same time, it was like I knew I was going to, because of the conditions of how they had set everything up, it was like they had all the goods, and if you don't consent to this conspiracy with us eternally, you're not going to be able to survive, and you're going to be cut up. And that's been true. I mean, I have no family. If I end up in trouble, forget it. I understand why people don't do that level of work, because depending on how the shadow structures set up in your particular family system, if you have that, they make it incredibly hard to ever break free. But I always, from an early age, it's like I'm going to just drink and I'm going to escape and I'm going to be a rebel. And so I was always kind of had one foot out of the door. I never quite knew how I was going to make it into another world where I could have stability. Mm-hmm. So by the time I got sober, I was well on the road to navigating and being able to negotiate very unstable terrain, which I've had to do all these years too, because because when I did that integration very early on, and then here I was healthy inside of a world that doesn't even acknowledge these wounds are going on. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And so there is a lot of that in the process. But I think back to your original question, for me, it's like I've always had a deep loyalty to my own soul, and that has really helped me. And I do think, and so by the time I actually started to turn around and look back at that childhood and face what had happened to me there, by then I had already separated myself from them, even though I would be in sort of tentative contact, and maybe I would take trips back. I knew to just get out. I went for the East Coast. I went all the way out to California. I put as much distance as I could between my family and myself. And so I had broken out somewhat by that point already.
Now, let's go to where you are today and what you're doing today. Do you believe that everything you went through has helped you come over and do exactly what you're doing now, and explain to the audience exactly what you're doing too, so they can understand the transition?
Oh, okay. Well, yes, I would say, my story is kind of a little bit different in some ways, because on one level I'm very always aware of the macrocosmic level of life, sort of what's happening on the planetary level with the collective and with consciousness and with our own sort of collective evolution. And then there's this personal journey I've taken, and I see how the two are very interrelated. Okay? And so I feel, I wouldn't trade my life with anyone on the planet, because I love where I am. Emotionally, spiritually, on all these levels, I'm totally embodied. I'm completely integrated. I feel everything, and I don't abandon myself in any way in this world. at least not for long. But that makes for a difficult existence as well, because I don't have the capacity to move through these realms of life that are completely overtaken, or that have been completely created and infiltrated by people who are self-alienated emotionally, and then they expect you to participate inside of those environments as though they're okay. And so that's been really hard, but I have lived with that, and so I feel capable of moving through the world and being conscious on these levels and being alone in that consciousness. Now I feel like,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm saying, but now I see, more and more people are coming to that place where they're becoming, they're allowing themselves to own how they feel about whatever, say, the public school system or social structures or the environment or the global scene or 2012 or whatever people are focusing on. Now, to me, the fact that I'm emotionally present and integrated allows me to navigate whatever is unfolding inside of my life. It doesn't change the world that I'm inhabiting and how I feel about that, right? And so I would say...
Oh, I'm sorry. You mentioned the words integration and ascension. Could you just explain what those words mean real quick for those of us who aren't sure?
Yeah. When I refer to integration, I'm talking about how, say, for instance, when I was a child, we'd be sexually abused in the shower, put in front of the television, given a lollipop and told that we were happy. And if we ever even looked at each other to acknowledge what had happened, we'd be slapped across the head. And so so in that, say right there in that scenario, I was forced apart from myself, okay, because that's not how I feel about being sexually abused. Okay, that's how I was made to say I felt about it. Okay, and that was all that was tolerated. So as I went through the process of integration, I had to me, it's like what happens in those scenarios is we become self-estranged. Okay, so back then as a child, I was not allowed to feel how I really felt about it, and in that setup, you do become separated from yourself. So then I went through life going, oh, you can do anything you want to me as long as I have a beer or whatever. It's like I'm okay. It doesn't, you can do anything. It doesn't bother me. And now, but that's not really how Motavenda Melchizedek, a human being as a soul who entered into this world as a baby, feels about sexual abuse. Okay, that's how I was forced to act like I felt. And I was forced to maintain that internally until I integrated through therapy, through retrieving and returning and turning back to myself, going back to that child back there and letting her tell me how she really felt about what took place, and